Welcome to the Postpartum Performance Podcast. If you're here to be empowered and encouraged, you're in the right place. I believe every woman deserves to learn who's in her corner, which is why this podcast was created, to share encouragement and intentional conversations around women's health, nutrition, and wellness for new mothers. In each episode, we will discuss ways for women to find truth for her health, to feel strong, and to be confident from the inside out. I'm your host, Dr. Lindsay Peczkowski, a performance physical therapist with a passion for teaching others about pelvic health and guiding mothers to build movement, confidence, and strength. I'm a lover of running and weightlifting and a healthy cooking enthusiast. All right, ladies, grab your coffee and settle in for an episode of the Postpartum Performance Podcast. Are you with me? Here we go. Hello, and welcome back to the Postpartum Performance Podcast. Lindsay here, and thank you for joining us today. Today on the show, we had the treat of interviewing Dr. Dawn Andalon, and we talk about her book, Beyond 9 Months, and talk about postpartum care in the U.S. We also talk about doing what you love, finding me time as a mother, and physical therapy for the active mom. A little bit more about Dr. Dawn. Dr. Dawn Andalon is a physical therapist, educator, author, and co-founder of Level 4 PT and Wellness. She is a spine and women's health specialist in the San Diego area. Prior to living in Carlsbad, California, she worked for Nike headquarters in Portland, Oregon as a physical therapist and consultant. She has always enjoyed fitness and working with active populations as she was a former dancer and gymnast. Dawn has completed certification through Polestar Pilates, which she has implemented with elite and Olympic athletes, surfers, golf pros, and the weekend warrior to enhance their chosen sport and for rehab with spinal injuries. She is highly trained in pelvic floor rehab, holds a manual certification from University of St. Augustine, and has special training with the female athlete population. She also enjoys treating spine, hip, and pelvic issues. Dawn has also a passion for postnatal care, serving as an educator to bridge the gap between labor delivery and return to exercise. In 2019, she released a best-selling book to help guide postpartum moms in their recovery postpartum called Beyond 9 Months. She has 2 daughters and co-owns her wellness center with her husband, Oscar, who is a PT as well. Ladies, this is such a great episode. I'm excited to share this one with you. So without further ado, let's get to the show. Hi, Dr. Dawn. Welcome to the Postpartum Performance Podcast. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Love being here with a fellow PT and someone that has the same interests as me. It's great.
Absolutely. Yeah. Starting this podcast, I wanted to let people know more about the postpartum world, pelvic health world, and all of that. And I immediately thought of you because you're in our neck of the woods and also doing a lot of pelvic health things. And so today we're going to be talking a little bit more specifically about your book, Beyond 9 Months. But before we get into that, I would love for you to share a little bit about yourself and what you do professionally, and then also anything personally you'd like to share.
Sure. Well, I am a mom of 2 girls. They're 9 and 11 now. So I'm kind of past that initial baby stage, which is amazing to be past that. But being a mom, I've been a PT for, oh my gosh, a long time. Let's see, I graduated in 2003 from PT school, so it's been a while. But I went down the path of the typical kind of sports medicine route, worked outpatient, then did some home health, did a variety of stuff. But when I had my own kids, I realized that my body was not the same again, and I wanted to stay active, stay working out and doing all the stuff I did before. But I was having some of my own issues myself. And I don't know about your journey in PT school. We had a 2-hour lecture back then on women's health, and it was really sad that there wasn't more information. Mm-hmm. But my first job out of PT school, I actually worked in Long Beach, and I was with one of the only women's health PTs in LA at the time. Mm-hmm. So people came from all over to work with her. And it was really eye-opening because these women would come in with stories or come in tears after 2 visits and be like, I can't believe how much this has helped me. So it was always on my radar, but it's not until I had my own kids that I was doing my own research on things to help me, and other moms asking me questions. And I'm like, I got to know more. So I went down that path to go through the courses to become a pelvic floor physical therapist and have that specialty. And the postpartum part was just always was close to me because it was something that affected my own life. So I think that's kind of how I went down that route. And being in sports medicine and seeing like lots of active moms, I worked at the Nike headquarters in Portland, and it was like eye-opening. They want to hurry up and get back into fitness, but there wasn't enough guidance. And I said, okay, when we open up our own place, and my husband and I, just like you guys, have gone into business together, and we both had different niches, but I really wanted to just dive in deep to women's health and helping more moms and women in general.
That's awesome. I love that you were able to find that through your own personal experience. I feel like that there's a lot of things that people kind of create or do based out of the need that they found. And with you and your husband starting level 4 PT and wellness in Encinitas and like Southern California area, for those of you not local. And that's just been so huge though, to use that, I think, to share your knowledge with all of the people. So I wanted to have you talk a little bit about your book. So your book, Beyond 9 Months, and I think some people allude to it, but I think a lot of women don't fully understand sometimes when we say it's like you're postpartum for life. Like you have a child and you are postpartum, and then or you've had a kid. So like these things are for the rest of your life. It doesn't just go away. So I would love for you to just share first about the book in general, and then maybe I think you had mentioned maybe the first chapter is a good one to start with that you might want to just give some nuggets of stuff on.
Yeah. Well, when I wrote this book, actually it was released last year, Beyond 9 Months. The main purpose was to share so many of the stories, like obviously without names, but in our office, of the questions that we hear from women over and over again. And they would say, why isn't anyone telling me this before? Why didn't I know this? Mm-hmm. And I'm sure you've heard the same things too, but it gets it's just so eye-opening because we know that there's so many women out there dealing with some of these symptoms. So I thought I'd break it up into chapters that have to do with finding out more information that you're not finding on Google. You're not going and Googling your problem and coming up the real stuff from the expert. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of the reason why I decided to do it and get it out there in another way to educate women. So it's broken up into chapters that have to do with what is prolapse, what do you need to do post C-section, having diastasis recti or abdominal separation postpartum, bladder problems, like all the stuff moms think that they just need to live with because they had a baby, and knowing it's not normal and there is someone that can help them. That was the main purpose. And then going through a basic, I really like talking about, well, in the first chapter, I go into the research that I did and finding out what other countries do that we don't do. And I know everybody's medical system being different and might support it in different ways, but it's frustrating to me when we hear so many stories of women that should have gotten care that didn't, or were never recommended to see us. So they kind of did their own research and found it on their own. Mm-hmm. But it was interesting, like countries in France, they automatically go through pelvic floor physical therapy afterward, and they have to see their physio before they join a gym or before they go into any kind of fitness program. It's just the system of taking care of moms is a lot different in other countries too.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's like there's so much information when you're pregnant and so many resources, but then what happens to the moms afterward? And during this whole COVID shutdown, when women were having their postpartum check-in at 3 weeks or 6 weeks and it was virtual and nobody was really guiding them, that's when it got really
not okay.
Oh, these poor moms. So we were doing a lot of virtual visits that way and just reaching out to them like, we're here to support you because
exactly
they need help.
That's all they need. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's kind of, the premise of the book, just going through a lot of the common questions and teaching moms the things that they can find on YouTube or Google, but not getting always the right information.
Mm-hmm. When you mentioned the moms getting tons of information during their pregnancy and all of that stuff, I had come across something on one of the social channels, and it was someone of like, no wonder some of the moms are not feeling supported, because it was when she was pregnant, everyone's like, oh, how are you doing? You're glowing. You look awesome. And then it was, she's holding a baby and they're like, oh, the baby is so cute. And like all this stuff. And like, how's the baby doing? And they like, don't care about the mom. And I just have found that working with women postpartum, it's like, that's unfortunately sometimes very true. And so I've made a conscious effort when I'm working with mothers or a friend or a family member that just had a kid to like ask the mom, like, how are you? Yes, your baby is beautiful, but how are you? And making sure that they have that outlet to do that. And just knowing that there are areas in the other parts of the world that are doing very different things for their mothers. And I find that very shocking, but unfortunately, like, yeah, that's a thing. Like, we're not going to have that balance of kind of the equal or like opening of services for people. But I'd be curious for listeners, if they don't know where to go to find someone for postpartum care, because we're here. We have specialists, like you and I are both like specialists in this. I sometimes say we're like the underground railroad of like physical therapy, where people like don't know where to go, but we're there. And I think it's becoming more of a thing. But to find those therapists that are doing those things, where do you recommend people start?
Yeah. And that's where just as much information that we can give them upfront, like my book or, blogs we write, and you do a great job with this too, but just being able to educate them more, and however they might listen to it. It is cool. Like you having a podcast that you can get the audio, and many moms won't have time to read, but they'll listen to something. So just however you can get that information to them so they can learn more about their body and then make the choice like, oh, this is what I need to do for it.
That's perfect. I'd be curious. So now you have lots of experience treating new mamas. What is something that you had mentioned, kind of like that I wish I would have known sooner, or certain diagnoses that you see a lot of, but also the women don't realize that it's something that could be taken care of? I know there's so many, but which one have you, or that you find you enjoy treating, I guess?
Yeah. We have the women that come in. I mean, I enjoy them all, but post C-section, I find it really eye-opening that it's a major surgery, and like a doctor will send you to PT after shoulder surgery or knee surgery, but why not having a C-section when
Right.
your middle of your body was affected? And it is like trauma, like any other kind of surgery, where they're not necessarily cutting through muscles, but it is a recovery. You need guidance from someone that can address any muscular issues going on, scar tissue, and how to get back into fitness. So I would say post C-section is like one of my favorites to treat, because a lot of the moms don't even realize too, like they're having pelvic floor symptoms, painful sex afterward, and they don't relate the two because they didn't have a vaginal delivery. So they didn't think any of that was affected, but those moms get better. So I wouldn't say quickly, because it does depend on the person, but it's like eye-opening for them that, oh my gosh, why didn't I know about doing this sooner? Or I'm so glad I found you, that kind of stuff they'll say. So I would say that those are my favorite.
Perfect. Would you mind sharing a little bit more on why they might be experiencing painful sex? Because I think, likewise, or some people, if they choose to have a C-section, or if it was an emergency C-section, they're like, oh, because I don't want to have to deal with having a dysfunction down in my pelvic floor. So we're going to kind of skip that. But there's still symptoms that can come from that. And so I'd love if you'd want to share a little bit more for the listeners on why are we asking you these questions and what that can lead to.
Yeah. And it goes through your whole pregnancy. You have a baby that's putting pressure down on your pelvic floor. So it's not that your pelvic floor was never affected, but it was because you were carrying a baby and you had different stresses during that time on your muscles down there and your pelvic organs. But after a C-section, if you develop any scar tissue in that lower abdominal area, and there's with any trauma, you start muscle guarding and you have some issues that are deeper below that, you'll start guarding in your pelvic floor muscles without even realizing it sometimes. And like we had a mom recently that was big into horseback riding before she even had kids. So this was a symptom of hers before kids, but didn't even know anything about pelvic floor PT until a friend told her. So it goes into their history too, what they did before. It can be definitely related to the C-section, but sometimes it goes hand in hand with what their history is or what their exercise experience is like too, like dancers, ice skaters. Those two, as you know, like we can see a lot of symptoms of painful sex later on, but it's the healing and the trauma after a C-section, and everyone's going to heal differently, and it's going to create symptoms that are from those muscles deeper.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I would love to hear part of your personal experience and growth with writing the book. Because do you feel like you are more of a writing type of person? Like, do you like journaling or things like that? Or how did you decide, besides getting sick of telling, the same thing over and over again, you can just say like, here, read the book. Like it's all in here. But besides that, like, how did you go to, I think I'm going to write a book?
Well, I can't lie. My husband really pushed me to do it. He's like my motivator. Like, Dawn, you said you're going to do this. Why don't you do it? So holding me accountable. But I think one of the biggest things about it too is you have this knowledge inside your head. So what's another way that you can spread that and share it with people? And I used to say that one of my dreams was to be published in some kind of magazine, like Women's Health Magazine or something like that. But then I got really annoyed at myself by writing. I know I'm a pretty good writer, but it's the patience and then it's the discipline to do it. So I actually did an outline of this book on a flight that I did from California to Florida. And I worked on the outline. I worked on the intro. And we were part of a business group, and we were going to this event 4 times a year in Florida. So we had lots of long flights, and that's how I wrote the book, because that's the only time I had with no distractions. So I would just tune out and just write and write and type and type. And then it went through many drafts before it was actually done. But that was the way that I disciplined myself, because there's no way I could have done it if I didn't have those flights to like have no kids around me, not be at work. Like, I just needed the distractions is always something that's really hard for me. So the focus to actually do it and accomplish it. And then I have a good friend that was a great editor. So I hired her to edit the book. And that was a huge help too, because it goes through so many drafts before it's like, okay, this is the way I'm going to organize it.
That's so cool. For listeners and for those new moms out there that they have this new added distraction of having a baby, and being a mother of 2 yourself, what strategies, or if there's any tips that you would want to share for finding some quiet time, or for kind of dealing with new distractions and that new kind of change into motherhood, feel free to share any you have.
Yeah, I would say, whatever you got to do, don't feel guilty. So sometimes if you put your kids in front of the TV for a little bit longer, or you give them a lower screen time so you can like just go have quiet time, or sit down and actually read something for yourself or listen to something. If you don't have much support, I know it's a lot harder, but asking for help is one of the biggest things. And I would say after my second baby, I got better at that. But that was always something like, no, I can handle it all. I can do it all, but you really shouldn't. And so stopping to just take a break to know like you deserve that time, and you're going to be better at being a mom, and you're going to be better at taking care of yourself or you're going to be better at taking care of others if you can put yourself first too. So I give that advice now because I didn't have that. And then I felt overwhelmed and exhausted. And so I just can't stress that enough at any stage in motherhood. It's like closing myself and I still do this. I close myself in the bathroom and I'll like read something or listen to something. I'm like, don't bother me. But that's what you have to do sometimes.
Yeah, whatever you got to do. Absolutely.
Whatever.
Absolutely. I'm sure there's some moms out there that are going, yes, Dawn. Like, I'm right there with you. I've been there.
The bathroom is where I usually go.
Yeah. That's usually like
off limits. Yeah.
Yeah. Off limits. Nope. Not okay. Mom's in there. Stay there. That's awesome. With your past work with Nike, I'd love to hear more about that and if that changed any of your approach to your treatment style, as well as just even your fitness and like active lifestyle and things like that, living in Portland and then coming here and all of those things, and then working for a very active brand. And how has that impacted kind of your experience moving forward?
Yeah, I think it opened my eyes more to know, like, sometimes as PTs, I always get annoyed in the typical PT setting where someone's on the table for the whole treatment, or it's not really relating to what they're doing in life, and it's very generic. So when I work there, I mean, very active. The average age of the people working there were between 25 and 45, and they're working out all day long. It's accepted to leave your desk and go to a yoga class or go play like a sport outside. So it was very active people. And the culture of it was like, well, I just want to be better at this. I just want to be better at that. It's not like they're really complaining about the pain. And so it was hindering them from whatever sport or fitness thing they wanted to do. So I just always took that and also having a husband that's in the sports realm too. And he did a lot of Olympic weightlifting, like CrossFit kind of stuff, and working with the active population. I learned a lot from him too. So I just wanted to be able to cross over pelvic floor PT with how can we relate it to real life more, rather than being, I don't even want to say a typical, but like a PT that's going to keep them in a treatment room the whole time during treatment. How's that going to relate to the real life? So that did sort of change my treatment style too.
Absolutely. And even for listeners out there, Kegels do not have to be performed laying down only, or they don't have to be the only thing that you're doing for pelvic floor strengthening or pelvic health or any of those things. It goes beyond Kegels, and that's like a whole like other thing that we could be talking about if you want to share a little bit about that. So it goes beyond Kegels, and why does it go beyond Kegels, I guess, would be something that we can.
Yeah. I mean, we're just talking about one muscle system. So even though we say we're pelvic floor specialists, but we do treat the whole body, and being an orthopedic physical therapist first. And this is your experience as well, like being a PT and learning about the whole body first, and then being even more eye-opening is going into the pelvic floor muscles and how those relate to everything. So it's just a portion of how you can get somebody get their symptoms resolved even better, is when you have the knowledge of both. But Kegels, and knowing that you just work on strengthening one muscle group, we know for a shoulder or a knee or anyone else, we're going to work on muscles above, below, and the whole body. So yes, it is only a portion too. And, you're somebody else that treats similarly too, like in the weight room, and you're giving them higher level activities that are going to get them excited and not be, I never like the nerdy kind of PT-esque, but how can you relate it to the strength and conditioning world and be able to do the real kind of stuff that they need?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. We take a similar approach working with active adults as well. And kind of that performance PT, what like postpartum performance, we're looking at for how you perform outside of your recovery, rebuilding and restoring that movement. But yeah, our gym or our clinic is basically a gym, because we want people we're working with people that have goals that they want to get back to higher level of fitness. So you have to then treat them that way, and give them the load or give them the challenge that they can actually be doing that. And I think that's a very cool thing that PT has evolved into as there's more places doing that. So also for just people to know that there's it's more than maybe you had experience at one place for physical therapy. That's one experience. It's the same thing. We like to use the analogy of like a restaurant. Like just because you go to one restaurant and you didn't really like the food doesn't mean that all restaurants are terrible. It's the same thing with physical therapy. You might go and you might not connect with the therapist, and that's just what it is. Or you might not have gotten better because of who knows why, other things going on in your life. But give someone else a try, because PTs are all very, very talented. It's just you have to find the right one and the right approach for you.
Yeah. And that's where we find too, like you and I have both worked in different settings as well. And we know what the system can handle. So when you go off on your own and you create something that is what you think is missing, like you have to find that PT that you're like, okay, this is the best fit.
For sure. So I wanted to ask you a little bit more. What do you like to do for fitness? I know I've seen you before at Orange Theory, but I wasn't sure what things that you're excited or passionate about right now. What type of exercise gives you joy?
Yeah, I've always been into running and weightlifting. And I was a former gymnast and dancer, so I do have like an eclectic type of workouts I like to do, and having a Pilates background. That's one thing that is on my goal to be doing weekly here. I mean, we have a full-time Pilates instructor, and I'm like, I need to just get on your schedule every week because it's kind of ridiculous. It's right here. But Pilates is something I love, and running because it's more of a mental release. But I would say doing circuit training is something I kind of stick to. If I work out right now with my crazy schedule, but it's getting better. If I work out 2 to 3 times a week, I'm doing amazing. But that means the other days I've got to be doing at least some walking, at least like some sort of movement. I can't be sitting all day because then I pay for it. It's just like we preach this stuff to our clients, so we have to be able to show it in action as well.
For sure. And you can definitely feel too. I can tell if there's days that I'm not doing much physically, I'm like, oh my gosh, like that was a learning opportunity that I need to get moving more tomorrow. For sure. Absolutely. I'd love to hear your thoughts on, so having 2 daughters, and being a pelvic health specialist, what would be some advice that you would give for mothers as your girls begin to grow up, and just like pelvic health in general? Just, I'm sure they ask you questions, or if they, see you're working on something, they might be curious about things. But what stuff would you want to share with young girls and like teenagers? Because I think there's a gap. There's definitely a gap for those moms postpartum, but then there's also that gap before girls are getting older. And I would love for kind of any advice that we can share, or things that we can talk about, or those conversations to have.
Yeah, I think it goes to diversifying types of exercise too. So you're really, I have one daughter that has a similar sort of aches and pains that I always complained of too, because she's got a similar body type, but just knowing what's really healthy for her back and her hips, and how that too plays into our specialty, but mixing up with yoga and Pilates as well as the cardio kind of stuff. And she plays soccer and surf. So just having, being able to diversify what you're doing for exercise, I think that's really important for teen girls. And also too, is teaching them about posture and holding their body. And I was in dance and gymnastics, so it's always about posture and like being up tall, and now they're sitting more. Yeah, so you have to think about even enforcing that even more than we did before. But I would say that's like the number one thing. And then, God forbid they're like toward teenagers and talking about periods and all that kind of stuff. I don't even want to go down that road.
Not yet.
But just knowing like Yes, that's my specialty. And so how can I be able to guide them in the right way, or maybe what I wasn't guided, and being able to teach them more about their body. But they're so intrigued by the stuff that they do. They were actually in the office with us this morning and like using the Theragun and giving themselves massages and testing their muscles. It's pretty funny. So they grew up around it. So I think they're just going to be used to knowing that it's the norm.
Mm-hmm. That's so good. Awesome. Well, I think last question I have for you, but before we get to that, if people want to reach out to you, get a hold of you, whether that's through socials or to come visit you or for getting a hold of your book, Beyond 9 Months, where can they find you?
Yeah, so you can go to level4pt.com and we have a women's health link at the top. So if you go to anything that relates to postpartum, any of those topics, you'll find my book on there, or you can go to Amazon and type in Beyond 9 Months and you'll be able to find it. It's the only book with that title. And otherwise, Instagram or Facebook, Level 4 PT and Wellness, or Level 4 Women's Health. We have a separate Women's Health page on Instagram.
Perfect. I'll be sure to tag those in the show notes for everyone. You're welcome. So final question that we have, hypothetical question. You are waiting in line at a coffee shop. What's your favorite coffee shop out here?
Phil's Coffee, Encinitas. Yes.
Phil's,
yes,
perfect. Yeah.
Phil's Coffee.
Phil's Coffee. So you're waiting in line at Phil's Coffee and there's a mom that comes up to you and she says, "Hey, Dawn, I have a quick question. I've been struggling with staying healthy and finding my new routine as a mother." So she's, maybe child is 1 year old. So she's not brand new, but she's definitely still new to the mom game. What advice would you give to her? You have 1 minute before you have to get off to treating some more patients at the clinic.
I would say, what do you like doing? First of all, what did you like doing before you had kids? And then how can you find an extra hour in your day to add that in? Because I know that's going to spark them and get them excited if it's something they used to do before, because a lot of moms struggle with their identity postpartum. So if it's something that you used to like to do and you add that back in, then it can just rejuvenate you and make you feel excited again about moving and doing an exercise type of routine, because it should be fun. It shouldn't be like you have to, work at it so hard. You do, but you don't. There's fun things you can add in and do.
I love that. Yeah. Perfect advice. Find something that you find joy in, or remembering what that is too. That is great. Absolutely great. All right. Anything else you'd like to share before we end?
No, I just love that, just sharing this knowledge, and more moms need to know that we're a resource to help them. And if there's any questions, nothing's off limits. We've heard it all. So don't ever be embarrassed. And it could be bladder issues. It could be painful sex issues, anything. We've heard it before.
Yeah. And here to help. Yep. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Dawn, for being on the show today. And we will see you soon.
Okay. Sounds good. Thanks.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Postpartum Performance Podcast. I appreciate you taking the time to listen, learn, and grow. If this is your first time tuning in, thank you so much for being here. The aim of this podcast is to provide oodles of the best possible content to help empower women, eliminate the phrase, "I wish I would have known sooner" around pelvic health, and to encourage personal growth through the postpartum journey to becoming the best version of yourself. If you enjoyed the show and found the content helpful, please remember to subscribe to the podcast and leave a 5-star review. These subscriptions and reviews help other mothers discover the podcast. If you're a regular listener, thank you. I encourage you to tell a friend about us or post on social media sharing your favorite part for today's show. If you're looking for more content like this, please follow me on Instagram at Postpartum Performance. Remember, mothers, if you're seeking to live life strong, I'm here with you in your corner. Continue to be brave, stay strong, and live confidently.